to our Flex presentation. Welcome to the Spring 21 semester. Welcome to Flex. I don't want to ignore the fact that we are still in a pandemic and that we are still operating remotely. Also, classes start next week, and so I don't even know what to say about next week, not just the classes starting, but with what's going to happen in our government. So I just want to be aware about that too. Because everyone has, I know, anxiety at the moment around everything I just said. So I hope that our BIRT Crisis and Conduct Workshop doesn't add any more anxiety to what's already happening around us. There is going to be an opportunity to download a flyer that we have, and there's a URL that Hong indicated there. So today's Flex workshop is BIRT, the Behavior Intervention Response Team, Crisis and Conduct. The title is Parallels and Intersects. And I want to introduce myself on the next slide, which I'm Ray Mapeso. I'm a counselor, but I'm currently the department chair. I'm part of BIRT. I also teach in human services and the HCD areas. Eva Rhodes is our counseling supervisor who's also here and is part of the BIRT team and represents the classified folks. And Hong Pham is our Dean of Counseling and Student Services who oversees and chairs the BIRT team, is the administrative representative and is also the conduct officer of CRC. If you want to take a screenshot, that might be helpful in case you need to reach us later. During the presentation, we welcome general questions, but if you have specific questions about cases, we would like you to contact myself, Hong, or Eva about specific cases, but we will always take general questions. I wanted to speak before we begin a little bit about confidentiality. And the counselor's work is rooted in confidentiality. Because we work with students, their information, the work that we do is, confidentiality is important with the work that we do. Also, we also are held by a federal law, FERPA, the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. And it provides a confidentiality ruling around student records, student transcripts, among other things, because students are minors at the college. So the reason we discuss confidentiality is that there may be times when we may or may need to ask you if the student is aware that we may be contacting them around BIRT, conduct, or crisis. We may or may not be able to provide you follow-up information about the student that's referred to BIRT, crisis, or conduct. Also as counselors, also as classroom faculty and actually staff at the college, we're mandated reporters for child abuse, neglect, and elder abuse. Counselors as mental health professionals also are held under TERASOF or duty to warn, which is if a student plans to harm themselves or others, we're required to report to authorities. And so I wanted to go over those areas rooted around confidentiality as we go through this Flex workshop.
So what this graphic is showing is how BIRT crisis counseling and conduct works together to promote a safe and healthy academic environment for students, staff, and for faculty. So on the BIRT and crisis counseling side of it, on the right side of that, really the intention is to be proactive about promoting safety and awareness about what may be coming so that we can stop it from actually coming, For example, if there is a student whose behavior can indicate that it could get a little bit larger and more complicated, we want to be proactive about providing support and resources for that student before that happens. There are times when a BIRT referral is also related to conduct. So for example, if a student has anger issues and throws a textbook at somebody, we want to be sure to provide the student with resources to address whatever is making them so angry, but we will not and cannot excuse the fact that they threw a textbook at somebody, and that's where conduct comes in. That's the accountability and the support for the student. The outcomes for this presentation are to provide faculty with resources at CRC for students who are in crisis and distress. We won't be getting into all of the community resources that are available, but certainly there are resources in the community for that. We'd like you all to know how to connect students to a crisis counselor, to be aware of the role of the behavioral intervention response team and how to submit a referral, and when needed, how to submit a conduct referral as well. I think the slide, Ray, was yours where you were going to,
Yeah. So we oftentimes hear from faculty and staff that they're not professionals in mental health or human behavior. And we wanted to provide a disclaimer during this presentation that we're not expecting you to be experts. We're not expecting you to diagnose a student. We're not expecting you to be professionals in the mental health field. The BIRT folks are Dean of Counseling and Student Services that conducts conduct, and counselors. We're all part of a team. And so the expectation rather than the burden of managing students with any of these behaviors is that we encourage you to consult with folks from the BIRT team as well as any full-time counselor. And so we wanted to make sure that that was clear.
Hi, so I'll be talking about BIRT, the Behavioral Intervention Response Team. You can, yeah. So what is BIRT? So BIRT, as it says, the Behavioral Intervention Response Team is made up of members from almost all constituent groups across the campus. This process provides a place where faculty and staff can address any concerns they have about a student. So students who may be experiencing distress or who are perceived to pose a threat to the safety of themselves and or other students, faculty, and staff. So basically, the purpose of BIRT is to proactively intervene and provide support and resources. As mentioned, this is the current BIRT, the current team, which includes counselors, Michelle Barkley, the college nurse, campus police, myself as the classified representative, and then Hong for the administration. So if you feel that you're observing behavior in a student that is concerning, you can submit a referral online. And the behavior, things like self-injurious behavior, disruptive behavior, unusual behavior, that's the time that you want to submit a referral. And you can find, as the slide mentions, you can find the referral form online. So if you go to the CRC employee homepage, you can hover over the college-wide menu item at the top of the page, then click forms and then counseling/referral forms. The link can also be found on the counseling website. So once a BIRT referral is submitted, the process is I will send an acknowledgement that the referral has been received. The BIRT team meets weekly, but there is a caveat that responses to the referent may not always be immediate. And during the BIRT meeting, referrals are reviewed and discussed to determine the best way to help the student. And support for student is designed and agreed upon and then implemented. And at the end of the process, then I send a completion notice to the faculty or staff member who submitted the referral.
And so what if a student needs immediate help? We have had a structure in counseling for as long as I've been there and before. I started at CRC as a rep from Sac State back in 1995 and got hired in 2000. But we've always had a designated crisis person in the counseling department. In our schedule, we have an AM crisis person, a PM crisis person, and a backup to the AM and a backup to the PM. So whenever faculty, staff, or self-initiated student comes and needs crisis counseling, we always have someone available. Our protocol is once a crisis is identified by a staff member, or again, if they bring themselves in, the student, the counselor that is the designated Chrysler counselor drops whatever they're doing, not literally, but if they're with a student, reschedules the student or lets the student know that they'll be contacted to be rescheduled, and then manages the student right away. When we were on ground, faculty and staff and students would walk right into the counseling center. But because we're in remote operations, if you go to the next slide, we have developed this really cool phone number. So please write it down. It's in red. And this phone number actually goes to 8 staff persons and rings, and one of the 8 will pick up the phone and will triage the incoming call and will refer it to whoever is the designated crisis counselor. And this is a really great system because we've got 8 folks that are managing this number. And because we're in remote operations and because students and faculty and staff can't walk into the counseling center, this is the best number for folks to call if there's an immediate need for a counselor that a student needs to see. Now, if it's a life-threatening situation, everyone in that situation should call 911. So if you are a staff person, faculty member, and it's a life-threatening situation, or a student, call 911. Crisis counseling isn't really the place for any life-threatening situations. But if a student is in immediate crisis, non-life-threatening, this is a great number to call. The next slide has other resources. And counseling faculty also have access to community-based organizations, but on our campus, our district on the right side of this slide has contracted with telehealth. And if you go to the health and wellness page, there's a link from the counseling page. There's additional resources for students, but like I said, counseling faculty have a inventory of community-based organizations that we can refer students through. There's also the 211sacramento.org website that have resources. If you Google Sacramento Street Sheet, the Sacramento Street Sheet, which was developed by Loaves and Fishes, and also is another resource for folks for community-based organizations in the community outside of CRC.
And then that brings us to conduct. So with regard to conduct, I'll review the regulation and policy, so what's in Ed Code, and then how that is implemented locally. And I'll also provide, I guess, the caveat that most of the conduct referrals I've had so far have been around plagiarism. There's a lot of codes that regulate how suspension and expulsion is administered, but I won't get into that today, just really for the purposes of this presentation. So the two codes that are most relevant in Ed Code are 66300, which basically specifies that each governing board of the community college needs to adopt rules and regulations governing student behavior. And then 76038 lists the offenses. Our policies reflect the Ed Code pretty closely, if not exactly. The other places where the code of conduct and the rules around conduct can be found are in the catalog. So it's under while you are here, and then students' rights and responsibilities. It's also forward facing on our website. So from the student homepage, if you go all the way to the right under our values, under there is the disciplinary procedures and due process. In terms of where to find it in our Los Rios regulations, it's in 2441, and that's the conduct and due process. Our grievance procedures for students can also be found in our regulations, but grievance is actually handled by a separate dean. So Dean Yolanda Garcia, our Dean of Enrollment and Student Services, addresses student grievances. This information, grievances, conduct, and due process, is provided to students at new student orientation, but to be completely honest, there's so much information that we are providing to students that it really is just a mention, because the intent, the outcome we're going for at orientation is to get the students to be able to enroll in classes. So majority of the time is spent on the different tools that are available, scheduling, how to see a counselor, how to use e-services, financial aid, etc. Students also receive a handbook that has this information, but we don't want to start a student's journey off talking about conduct and disciplinary procedures. So we let them know that it's available, but we don't have the time to spend to go into it in great detail. As I mentioned previously, the most common referral is plagiarism. This is the conduct process that I've implemented. I've been in this position since July, and so a lot of it I'm still discovering. I don't have the benefit of being, I guess, in the office where I can look at all of the old files that have been available. So I've been procuring information as I've moved along. Essentially what happens is once a faculty member submits a referral, I'll meet with the student. Prior to meeting with them, I'll gather any information, investigate as needed. Because so many of the cases have to do with plagiarism, I also send them there's a Canvas module that the library developed that talks about how to avoid plagiarism, what plagiarism is, and they're required to complete that before meeting with me, and they show me their certificate when we meet. 9 times out of 10, they all are actually really glad that they did it. They've shared with me that they learned quite a bit. I recently discovered there's a completion email or letter that is sent to faculty. So between the period of July and December, I was not aware that there was this letter, but now that I've found it in some old files, I'll be sending a completion notice to faculty. And again, to protect the students' confidentiality, there isn't anything that's disclosed in that letter other than that I met with them and if I refer them to resources, etc. This letter, I think, has been around for quite some time. There's a note on the bottom that says it was written in collaboration with the Academic Integrity Committee. So that'll be the letter that I'll use from this point forward to let faculty know that their conduct referral is complete. Conduct is not meant to be a punitive process. It really is a learning opportunity for the student. And so these are the 4 outcomes that I'm going after when I meet with a student, that they understand why the referral was made, what happened and why did this violate the code of conduct, that they understand what is appropriate behavior and conduct. Often we'll talk about how this is going to be applicable to everything they do in their lives from now on. I very recently met with a student who, said, look, I did it and I thought about it. And, later on in life, what am I going to do? If I don't understand something, am I going to cheat? I don't want to do that. So there is a period of reflection that happens with the student. I connect them to resources to prevent a second referral. Again, if it's plagiarism or cheating on a math test, I talk to them about, the math center. I know now there are some math workshops that are available that are not connected to the math center, et cetera. But overall, I want the student to know that they're a part of a community of care, that they're meeting with me as an expression of that care, but also accountability. And that they have support, and that we at CRC have really high standards for them and believe that they can meet and believe that they can meet that standard. And this is probably the fastest Flex presentation, maybe that you'll attend. And since we have time, I don't know, Matt or Eli, if you have any questions, we certainly have time to answer it.
Michelle's here too.
Oh, hi, Michelle. Sorry, I didn't see you. I'll stop share.
So I used BIRT in the past, and it never seemed like it went anywhere. And so this is really useful to hear. I didn't get feedback that they received anything. It was like I was sitting into a black hole. And one time I did get a contact from a counselor who was looking into a student that I referred, but it was 10 weeks after I made the referral, and the student had already dropped the class. So I was unable to interact, and it was a little frustrating on that sense. But I like to hear that there's some feedback that'll show up, so we know it's actually been heard, because it made me just not want to use that resource anymore, because I felt like I didn't know if it was going anywhere. So this was really helpful to hear. So thank you.
I just want to say, sometimes, so it goes someplace, Eli. Sometimes, though, it's helpful if we know from faculty what expectations they have, because we're bound to certain confidentiality guidelines. And so many instances, we can't report back to faculty what happened.
Oh, yeah, I know. I'm aware of that one. It's just that there is nothing ever said at all. And this was like 4 years ago when I last did this. So it was a while ago, because it was fruitless. It seemed fruitless. And I hadn't wanted anything. It was a student. She was very engaged and participating in the class, and then she just bombed a test. And she basically went goth on me. So she came, and right after I gave back the grades, she was dressed in black, completely changed her behavior. And I kept on asking if she's okay. She's like, I'm fine. And her behavior completely changed. And so I was just concerned about her well-being. And so that was what the referral was for. And that was all I asked, for them to just check up on her, because she wasn't really responding to me. So I didn't expect to hear anything. Just to know that they received that I had sent it was what I was looking for in that sense.
But what I would say is that, as a faculty member, I would say, because it's helpful to us, that if you could let me know the outcome. I've told the student that a counselor is going to call. Please let me know what the outcome was, or give me some feedback. I'm going to let the student know that the counselor will give me some feedback about you, just so that we can meet the expectation that you have in terms of a response. I don't think anybody on BIRT has an issue with that.
Okay, it was just, I didn't even know who to talk to, because the form was pretty opaque. And so when I put that information in there, it wasn't clear which specific person I should send that to, because there wasn't actually even a much of a box to fill in about what I was looking for, other than I was just concerned for her well-being or something like that. But I didn't, yeah, it was just not an effective tool for me to fill out. When the person got back to me, they complained that I didn't fill out the form right, because I didn't put my contact information down, so they couldn't get back to me, which may have been it, but there's only one of my name on the entire campus, so it's not hard to find that one. But it was mostly just I felt really worried about her. And so I just wanted her to be okay. I actually contacted her later on and sent her an email, and she actually said, oh yeah, I just didn't want to take your class anymore. And I was like, oh, well, thanks. So
that's awesome. No, and I think from 4 years ago, it's evolved since then too. So hopefully if you do submit a referral, you'll see, okay, because we say we got it. We're gonna contact the student. We may not contact you, but I think it's changed since 4 years ago.
It does sound like it already. So
yeah, and if you happen to do another referral, let us know. Let any one of us know, please.
Yeah, that's
There-
what I was
if
going to say.
there-
Is probably the only other person that in here that's, sent a BIRT referral, because there's, I think all 4 of you are on the BIRT referral team, right? So it's been my experience in the last 2 years that I always get a confirmation email that it's been received, and then a follow-up email that it's been, closed, essentially. So, which is my indication that the student's been helped, like you don't, or at least attempted to be contacted. You don't get the, necessarily the play-by-play of what happened, but and I wanted to attend this workshop just because especially in the remote operation world that we're in. And, I know in the past, I would send a BIRT referral so that our mental health counselor could meet with that student. I wasn't sure if that's actually the case anymore, but, especially with telehealth coming on board, right? So, but I know that there's another form that I've been using, and probably Michelle knows this because I've sent a couple already. So yeah, so I just wanted to see how the processes were intersecting at this point. So, thank you, appreciate it.
And Matt, so yeah, that, because it's a great resource. That too is a great resource, and we have that specific for the counselors. So, but yeah, so and BIRT is kind of is everyone. So perfect, great.
Right, yeah, no, I figured that makes sense, absolutely.
And Eli, just one more thing, since you're the only classroom faculty member here, really, so you're the only audience member here. Tell as many faculty that BIRT is really interested in any feedback, because sometimes we operate in a vacuum, and we don't know what the experience out there is for folks that would submit a BIRT referral. So if anybody experiences any glitches or anything, we want feedback from folks so we could change it.
And
Absolutely.
there are glitches because I'm the one who sends the acknowledgement and the completion notices, and occasionally, just human error. Sometimes the completion notices, very rarely, but might not get sent out. And the caveat in the slide was that the response is not always going to be immediate because there's the lag time in trying to contact a student, waiting for the student to get back, and sometimes they don't. They don't have to, and so so we can't always guarantee there's going to be immediate response. So, but yeah, we do our best. We definitely get all of the referrals that come through and discuss them. So yeah, that's unfortunate that you had that experience, but it is a great resource for faculty and staff to use. Believe me.
It sounds great. This was 4 years ago, and we discussed it a lot in SME, and a lot of people have been having the same experience. And so I'll definitely let everyone know that if they haven't been, that it has changed in that sense, because everyone felt like they're just throwing things up into the wind and didn't know if it landed anywhere. And so this will be great.
Yeah, I'd say it's much more streamlined now.
Well, thank you, everybody. If Eli doesn't have any more questions.
No, that was really great. It was useful to hear. So.
All right, have a great day and have a great start to the spring semester.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.